thank you very much for the introduction. It is such a pleasure to be here. I think we've been here for the last 3 years. Last year, our director, Kathy Sneed, was here. I was here when you had your event at Jekyll Island, which was also a wonderful location, and we really, really appreciate being invited to this conference. As you can tell from the introduction, I am very old. Having been at SOC since 1979, I could say I was a mere child when I got there, and it would be almost true. But being in an organization like SOC and seeing how the landscape of education for the military student has changed has really been, for me, a life-changing event. It has been an amazing development. In those early days when we came about, we would never have seen a group like this that's sitting in an auditorium talking about adult students, and not only talking about adult students, but talking about giving them credit for their prior learning. To me, it's an amazing, amazing thing. The way we came about was near the end of the Vietnam War, when military students were not being welcomed very well into the higher education community when they came home. Today, that's different. Veterans are welcomed, they're served, we care about their needs. But back then, there was a hostile relationship between the education and military communities. So what happened was some folks in the Department of Defense reached out to the higher education community and basically said, will you help us? Will you help our students so that they can get an education? And that's how SOC came about. The idea was, and still is, that military students deserve the same educational opportunities as their civilian counterparts. And in order to make that happen, some special things have to be done because their lifestyle is very different. While they're part of the adult education community, they're also different, as you all know, because you deal with them. They have a mobile lifestyle. They get deployed. They come back home. They don't fit the traditional semester schedule sometimes because they're pulled out right in the middle. So the organization of SOC came about to solve those problems. If you look at our umbrella and what our organization is like, you'll see that we do a lot of different things. In the beginning, there was just that little box that said SOC Consortium. There were about 25 or 30 colleges when I joined the consortium, or when I joined SOC. We had 4 staff members. Today, there are 1,950 plus colleges and universities, and we have 30-some staff members. So we've grown a lot in order to take care of military students' needs as they have adapted. And thinking about going from 4 to 30 and 25 to 1,950 institutions, you know, that's happened since 1972. So, you know, things have changed and changed pretty rapidly. Once the consortium got going, what we had were requests from the Navy, or the Army, I'm sorry, the Army was the first, that said, all of this general consortium stuff is really good, but we want something more. We want guaranteed transfer. We want really specific programs for our Army people. And that's how SOC Ad came about. Then the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard came along and said, okay, we'd like that too. So we have something called the Degree Network System, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We also have a program called the Concurrent Admissions Program that we work with the Army Recruiting Command to connect young recruits with the college as soon as they enlist. So they start a relationship with the college in their community, and when they come home from their duty, they're already connected, can get started, go through the processes, and begin their college education without hassle. When you start an organization, and when you have an organization, there have to be standards, rules, criteria, whatever. And the SOC group that got together, again, we're looking for flexibility, access, commitment to the military student. They wanted to keep it simple, so they tried to look at the big picture and said, okay, what do these institutions need to do to make life better for the military student? The first thing they thought about was transferability. We were getting phone calls back then that would go like this. Hello, I've been in the service for 15 years. I have 160 credits, and I can't get a degree. And oh, by the way, I've taken English 1 5 times, and every time I transfer to a new college, if I have 40 hours, they take 10. If I have 50, they take 10. And I just can't get anywhere. People were moving forward, transferring, and this is what was happening. So basic criterion, reasonable transfer of credit. Try to avoid duplication and minimal loss of credit as the student transfers. Pretty simple. Nowadays, mostly done. We don't have very many calls like that anymore. Occasionally we still get them, but colleges are really doing a good job in terms of transferability. The second thing that was a big stumbling block to the mobile lifestyle was the residency requirement. The good thing is that all colleges have them. That's a quality control measure. Most of the time, or many times though, they're the last year in residence, or half of the last year, or some criterion, some number that ties the student to the location of the institution at a particular moment in time. If you're mobile and you're moving every year or two, that doesn't work. So the creators of SOC said, okay, let's see if we can ask our institutions to require a maximum of 25% in residence and no final year or final semester. And everyone has responded for the most part. And those colleges that have a residency requirement that's a last year or a last semester or something that is location bound, most of them will write waivers for the military student. We know how difficult it is to change institutional policy at the administrative level, but waivers work. And what we do is we file them with the institutional information, and it's worked very well. Well, think about how long we've been around. The last two things, last two criteria, are things that you guys are working with at this conference. They're credit for prior learning. The first kind of prior learning that we were concerned about was that credit for military training and experience. In the early days, nobody had even heard of the American Council on Education Military Guide. Now it's something that you all know about, that everybody, if they don't use it, at least they know what it is. But back then it was a rare thing, even though the American Council had been evaluating military credit since the 40s. So today it is something that people know exists, and the SOC colleges and universities agree to give credit for military training and experience where applicable to the degree. Often what happens is that students don't understand that, parents don't understand that, because we get calls from parents. A few years ago we had a call from someone who said, well, on my son's arts transcript, there's military credit, and this college is not giving it to him. And we said, okay, what is the course? Marksmanship. Okay. Where do you want that credit, or where were you looking for it to be applied? Humanities. So, you know, it sometimes not only is educating colleges and universities about what we expect from them, but it's also educating the consumer about what is reasonable and what to expect. The last criterion deals with credit for nationally recognized testing programs, such as CLEP, DSST, Excelsior College exams, certification exams, any kind of exam that's out there. We ask you to look at it and, again, give credit where it's applicable to the degree. So those are the four basic things that SOC colleges and universities do. This one, best practices, are kind of rolled into the criteria. Commitment to military students, basically taking care of them and keeping promises for them, supporting returning service members when they come home so that they feel welcome in your institutions and so that they have the opportunities, again, that regular students have. So that's just kind of an overview of best practices. We'll get a little bit more specific now. How many of you have seen this document? Great. On our website, in person. I have a few of them up here if you'd like them. If you would like to have them to distribute at your institution, just call our office, send us an email, and we will get them to you. But the way this came about, it's kind of, this is the consumer protection document for SOC. About 5 or 6 years ago, we were having a meeting of our advisory board. That's a once-a-year event. The advisory board is composed of members of the higher education community, basically the higher education associations, 15 of them, the military services, the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs. And each year they meet and talk about policies that are relevant to the SOC consortium and the degree network system. They talk about issues that are coming up in higher education. So we were sitting at the meeting and we were telling them that for the past year, most of the phone calls, or many of the phone calls that we were getting, were from students who were having bad experiences with institutions out there that they had found on the internet. And Kathy Sandine yesterday mentioned about the internet. How do you know it's true? Is it true? Isn't it? Is it real? Isn't it? Anybody can create a website. So what was happening is that some of these really whiz-bang, good-looking websites that had obviously been created by fabulous marketeers were inducing students to enroll at their institutions and then doing bad things. They would do something. We had one student who thought that he had registered for a course, and when he got deployed, he had to withdraw from the course, and then he found out later that he had not registered for a course. He had registered for a series of courses. And oh, by the way, you owe us $18,000. The other thing that a lot of these places were doing was forcing the student to put a whole lot of personal data onto their site before they could even see what degrees were being offered by the school. So they had all these personal information bits, and then what they started doing is bombarding the students with phone calls and emails and that sort of thing. And you know, some of them told us they had to change their cell phone numbers. So as we were having this discussion, one of our advisory board members piped up, well, what you need is a Military Student Bill of Rights. So the board appointed a task force, and they created a Military Student Bill of Rights. And it's not a complicated document. We tried to keep it simple for the consumer, but it begins with all military student populations have basic rights to satisfactory college marketing, admissions, and student services practices. And then under that, there are 10 areas that are covered. Some of them are accurate information about the school's program, accurate information about financial aid. One of the things we were finding was that students were being told that, hey, you can go to us for free. And that sounded pretty good until they found out that what free meant was using their tuition assistance. So things, financial disclosures, student services, degree planning, all the things that you guys do as a matter of course because it's what reputable institutions of higher learning do, we codified so that students can come and look and know what they can expect of their institutions. In order to make that work, we needed something for our members. After the Military Student Bill of Rights got going, students were going back to the colleges and were saying, hey, I have these rights, and what are you going to do for me? So our institutional representatives at the board said, we think we need to create for you a code of good practices for any institution that becomes a member of the SOC consortium to follow, to implement that Military Student Bill of Rights. In your folders, you have my document that I included that Mary Ellen asked me for just one that would be the most important, are the SOC principles and criteria. And on page 8, you will see the code of good practices, or the standards of good practice for our institution. That has been actually pretty useful. It basically details what we expect in terms of those 10 basic rights and implementing them. The degree network system. I know that some of you in here, some of the colleges are members of the degree network system. If you are, do you know who you are and can let me know? Okay. Okay, so you know how it works and what's done. One of the things that I've found at the conferences, I've talked to people that while many of your institutions are members of either the consortium or the degree network system, you don't happen to be the contact person for that specific area, so you don't really know that you are. So that's okay, not a problem. The degree network system, the colleges in the degree network system, the degrees in the degree network system are selected by the military services, the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. They base them on needs assessments of their students. What kind of degrees do they want? What do they need? What are they looking for? That kind of thing. We work with the service to bring the colleges into the system. We have an articulation system that I'll be talking about that actually is the heart of the degree network system and also the heart of awarding credit for military training and experiences and tests and that sort of thing. One of the questions that we always get when we say Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, what about the Air Force? The Air Force has the Community College of the Air Force, which is a regionally accredited institution. So they don't really feel that they need to be in the degree network system, although they support us. They are sitting on our advisory board as members of the military community. We have talked to them at various times about some liaison activities, but just, I know Air Force is around here. Don't think that they're left out because they're not, and they are very, very supportive of the SOC mission. If you look at this slide, it's pretty boring, but it has some good information there. Down the left-hand side, you have the membership requirements and things that colleges in the consortium do. You can see the 4 criteria are represented there. You can see that we have even a general evaluation and degree planning that we expect based on that Military Student Bill of Rights. Then on the other side, SOC Ad, SOC Nav, SOC Mar, SOC Coast, the same criteria, but they go a little bit farther. Not only do they give credit for military training courses, they give credit and use the ACE Guide recommendations for occupational specialties and rates and ratings. They participate in 2-way guaranteed transfer. And they have a very specific degree planning tool that actually takes all of the credit that a military student has from the military transcripts, from any other documentation that they have. It is an official evaluation. It sits on the degree planning document, which is called the SOC Degree Network System Student Agreement. It shows the degree requirements. It shows all of the requirements and all of the credit for each of those areas of prior learning, and in the end, it shows what is left and what is needed. This is the degree network process. works a little differently than ordinary transfer. Those of you who are part of the system know that instead of transferring forward when a student moves from institution to institution, once they have that student agreement degree planning document, everything that happens in the future in terms of academic credit, whether it's more credit for their military experience because they advance in their MOS, whether they're taking courses at other colleges and universities, taking tests, whatever, it all goes back to that original college, which is called the home college, and that's the college that offers and gives them the degree. For our students, this has been a huge thing because you don't get the experience of moving forward every couple years and having to get readmitted and starting over. So that's one of the foundations of the degree network system. Credit hours awarded for military training and experience. You can see them in various places and displayed in various places. The Joint Services Transcript. I think Michelle Spires from ACE will be here tomorrow, and she will give a presentation on the Joint Services Transcript, which has just been implemented, and now there's no longer Arts and SMART and the Coast Guard Institute transcript. Again, the Air Force has its own because it is a separate institution that is regionally accredited. If you look in the ACE guide, and most people nowadays are looking at it online, you can see that there are two pieces to it. And again, I know Mary Beth Lakin and other ACE staff will be talking about that too, but you see a section on credit for service schools, you see a section on credit for occupations. And then the one that I'm going to talk about today is our degree network system credit evaluation supplement, where we map non-traditional credit to our course categories, which I will talk about now, within the degree network system. What we have is a taxonomy of generic course descriptions for various academic areas that are represented in the degree network system. So for example, we have 50 colleges who are offering degrees in management. What happens when a network is created like that is that we hire faculty experts to look at the degrees that are being proposed for the system. They look at all the courses that each of the colleges in that area are providing in their degree plan, and they make a taxonomy, a generic taxonomy of management, what we call course categories. We have them in lots and lots of areas. Then what happens is that when colleges join the network, the course descriptions for all of those are sent out for a peer review to the colleges in the system. If you're in the degree network system and you participate in that, you know what it's like. You get a spreadsheet that has lots and lots of courses on it that are being offered by your peers, and what you do is say, yes, we will consider that equivalent to our Management 101 or our Economics 201 or whatever. So it's a peer review process. It happens a couple times a year because we try to stay up to date, and colleges change things, so those things have to be circulated to the peers. But what you end up with is a group of courses, and I did give you two handouts. One of them is a single page, and what you end up with in that taxonomy of courses are course category codes. And breaking down a course category code, we have associate degree codes and we have bachelor's degree codes. Sometimes they're in both, but it depends on the level of the course. I picked this one, and you can see the two-letter prefix is pretty obvious that that's an economics course. Then the number identifies the particular topic, and then the third thing is the A or the B. So if you look on that single page that I gave you, you can see there, it's two-sided, A and B, that all these courses are listed in that thing. And what that means to the student or to you as a college counselor, that when you have a student and your college is in that table and your student says, okay, I can't take that here, but I'm going to such and such an installation and I need it, you look at that table, and if the colleges at that installation have the course, it's an automatic thing because you've had peer review, it's two-way guaranteed transfer, and there's no work for you in having to dig out the catalog and look at it, compare the descriptions, and think about it. It's a done thing, and it has been done by the institutions themselves. We didn't do it. You know, I know that the ACE people are always having to say, we're not the ones who do the evaluations. It's faculty members. We're the same way. We're not the ones doing this. This is being done by you as a peer group. So we trust your judgment. If we get someone who gets a course description and says, doesn't work for us, one of two things can happen because it has to be unanimous. We can talk to them and say, would you reconsider and do some more research on the course and the course description. Sometimes what we do is we will collect syllabi from the institution and send it to the group who doesn't think it's equivalent and work through the situation that way. If it's just a hard and fast thing that they say absolutely not, then they're the ones who don't end up in the transferability tables because it has to be 100% agreement. Does anybody have questions about that? Because it's kind of like a thorny process. Okay. Then what do we do with that? How does it work? How does it get implemented? How is it helpful for you or for basically the colleges in the degree network system? I'm offering this kind of thing to you as a model because I know you work on articulation yourselves. You're also working to award credit and map credit for military training experience to your courses and to the degree requirements that you have in your degree plans. We have this thing, well, before I go there, no, that's okay. We have this thing called the Credit Evaluation Supplement, which you can see here. And what we do, each year, we go to the ACE, they actually feed us their data, in any new terms that they have in their database, because again, the way they work is, as you all know in looking at an exhibit, they list credit terms, and they'll say, you know, macroeconomic principles 3 lower level or 3 upper level. That's the recommendation. So we go in there, and any terms that we don't have, we look at them, and they get matched to our taxonomy of course descriptions and get assigned a course category for credit. We look at anything that's changed, because sometimes what happens is the exhibits, things are no longer active. So we keep up. We do this really just once a year because there aren't a lot of changes usually in the course of a year. But we try to keep up with what ACE is doing so that we're matching their credit terms to the course categories in our degree plans. If you look at this yellow couple-sided thing, you'll see several pages, and I noticed that our Xeroxing person in the office got a few things mixed up, but it's okay. What you have here, the first page says ACE subject areas mapped to SOC DNS, which is Degree Network System, course category tables. And then you'll see circled macroeconomic principles. If you remember, that was a course category a couple slides ago that I showed you, and it is the one on the transferability tables. So what we have said for the benefit of our colleges and recommended to them that term can be mapped directly to macroeconomic principles if you have a course there. But you know, sometimes what happens is students have already taken that. Yep, already done. So what we say is, okay, the tendency, if there's not a direct match, and sometimes even if there is, what is the tendency for mapping military credit? Mapping it to free electives because it's easy. And it's hard sitting there looking through an exhibit and determining, okay, we have a course in this area, does this match up? And you know, sometimes it's very time consuming. This gives our folks a way of doing it again in a way that it has already been reviewed. If they can't map it to the course because it's already been taken and it would be duplicative, we say, okay, how about mapping it to macroeconomics electives or economics electives or business electives so that the student gets credit in a specific area of need rather than just going to free electives. I'm not sure what order your things came out in, but we do the same thing in the credit supplement with testing programs. Each year, we look at the descriptions of the CLEP tests, the ECE tests, the DSST tests, and say, okay, here are the descriptions for these. What categories do they map to? And the good thing along with that is those categories those tests have ACE credit recommendations. So we've made tables for CLEP, for DSST, and for ECE exams that again gives you something to work with as opposed to having to continually reread things and remap them. So this is the kind of system, I don't know, what you are doing for mapping credit for both military training experience and for testing for all kinds of prior learning. But a system like this, while it's a lot of work in the beginning, in the end it really pays off because then you don't have people just saying, I don't have time for this, so it's going to free electives. Other thing that we do, even though the Air Force is not in the degree network system, they have a lot of courses that correspond to the courses in our transferability tables. So we also map those each year. We read their catalog each year, and where we have categories that match up with their courses, we marry them together again and give you a tool that if you get an Air Force student, you have a mapping mechanism. So that is what the credit supplement does. In terms of your own lives in the college arena, what kind of objections do you get from faculty and/or administrators about awarding credit for military training and experience? What are your most commonly occurring objections? Anybody?
They're not positive that what's in the ASPI actually is the equivalent of a course. And frequently they'll specify 2 credit hours and the course is actually 3. They just don't know what to do with it.
And they don't see that it's content matching.
They don't see enough content to make them. So they've got a brief course description they want to use.
Yep.
And it's very, very difficult to get the syllabus. For us anyway, that we have tried, and even it seems to me for the servicemen.
Okay.
Excuse me. Can we make sure we're
Microphones.
capturing these with mics?
Yes,
Because
microphone.
this is being recorded. It will be placed on our iTunes use site. So we're trying
have
to get the
somebody
second
right
mic,
here.
second mic to work. And right now I'm going to pass this.
Just an additional comment on that particular issue. We have had some success working with academic departments where they'll recognize that the course is equivalent to 2 credits, and talking with the student, maybe the student has knowledge that might cover the 3rd credit, it's just not obvious in the course description.
Right.
They've created a departmental exam for that portion of the course. And so we've combined the ACE credit and the departmental
Right.
exam to equal the 3 credit hours.
And that's a wonderful solution, that you don't just deny the credit, but you find a way to make it work with some kind of a supplemental thing. This gentleman right here was talking.
I'm just going to say we're very much like the lady behind me. It's hard getting traction on this. You keep getting the answer. We're working on it. We're thinking about it. We'll be there someday, but you know the formal structure is pretty hard to get established.
Does anybody else have feedback from their institutions about why this is hard?
Do you run into questions about accreditation if they have specialized accreditation? That's some of the pushback we get, is that, well, our program is different. We're accredited by disciplinary accreditor.
We do, and in fact, on my list of reasons here that we hear, accreditation is one of them, both in general and specifically. And what we and ACE again try to impart is that you're talking about specific content in a specific course area. So look at that. Don't think about some global, global thing. Faculty, the good thing is that in many ways, they're the gatekeepers, and they care, and they're interested in maintaining academic quality. But new things like this, which is not new anymore, but to some of them it is, are often a problem getting through and making them understand. Kathy Sandine mentioned some of that yesterday. We have the experience, a few years ago, we had the Army ask us to bring a college into the degree network system. They had a particular installation that had done a needs assessment, and that installation was really interested in that degree. The Army, the overall Army continuing education wanted to bring it into the system. We had done, or were doing, the work to make the transferability happen. But when it went back to the institution, when that transferability information went for them to look at the courses and determine equivalency, the faculty just jumped up and said, no. And we think that this might not be a quality, this credit that you guys are talking about might be an issue in terms of quality. It might impact our accreditation, watered down degrees, all of these things that they're legitimately concerned about. But what the real problem was is they didn't understand how this was done. So one of our real success stories, our director, Kathy Sneed, and someone from the American Council on Education were able to get an appointment with the faculty at that institution. And they made a trip there, and they basically did a presentation from SOC perspective, from the ACE perspective, and showed that there is rigor in the process, and that our transferability wasn't just a bunch of people sitting in our office saying, oh, that looks good, the course titles are the same, so we'll stick it in the transferability table. And from ACE's perspective, that we are using faculty members to do these evaluations. Once that meeting happened, our people came back to the office, and the colleges entered into the degree network system, and now their faculty is one of the most participatory faculty in the whole system. So sometimes it's just a matter of getting to the right people within the college and showing them how things work. A lot of times they don't understand also the military culture, and that these courses that military people take, that the occupational experience that they take and the things that they learn really are college level experiences, and making them take courses in those areas for stuff that they already know is a waste of the student's time, a waste of the institution's time, can be a problem for tuition assistance, and that it's just a matter of getting everybody educated. One of the things right now, as you probably all have experienced at what had gone on this spring, was that tuition assistance was suspended. And so we had students kind of just out there, because it happened virtually overnight that one day they had tuition assistance, next day they didn't. Then there was a lot of activity, people going on the Hill and lobbying Congress, and the same thing happened. It got turned on again overnight. So there was a lot of chaos. Well, if tuition assistance isn't safe, and we anticipate that there will be tuition assistance, but as financial resources dwindle for the military student, getting prior learning credit is a huge deal because it moves them forward in their degree programs faster, and they're not as inclined to just stop. We want an educated military. The students are coming, and you probably, I don't know how many of you have substantial numbers of military students, but as Kathy Sandine said yesterday when she was talking about veterans, you're going to be getting more and more of them as they come home because there's a huge GI Bill benefit out there. So having that credit for their military training experience enables them to go further, progress toward their degrees, and basically enables the taxpayer to get more bang for the buck so everybody wins. Anybody have any questions? I think I've done it. Wait, just a second.
Sorry, I was just wondering what kind of degrees the students, military students usually get. Are they like in electronic engineering or?
That's a very good question. What we find, and it's an interesting thing, that the military services really, really try to get their students interested in degrees in their occupational area because they're inclined to get more credit. They are further along in their degree, saves money because there's not as much tuition assistance spending. What we find, like in the degree network system, because we have statistical reports, at the 2-year level, despite the push from the military, most of the students are getting general studies and interdisciplinary degrees. They're looking for a general education, particularly at the 2-year level. At the 4-year level, the most commonly occurring areas are management and business, computer studies, criminal justice, not so much in something like electronics technology, which you would expect because it's a commonly occurring MOS. Now, on the other hand, we have a group of colleges within the Army SOC ad system where there's a program called the Army Career Degree Program. And we do get more students that are in technical areas that are related to their specialties there because what we do and what we have been asked to do, and we now have programs like that for the Navy, the Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, is that we talk to individual colleges who have degrees in, like say you have MOS, I don't know, let's say 60B. We look at that MOS and we see what kind of experiences are in that MOS that would translate to academic credit. Then we look at our colleges and say which college or colleges have degrees in that area that might be willing to work with us. And then the Army Career Degree Program Manager negotiates with that college directly using the ACE guide and the college agrees to the credit awarded for that MOS, and it's a done thing. The degree plan is created, and there's no negotiation anymore because the negotiation's been up front. So we do have some that are occupation related, but student choice is surprising because they tend to look more to a liberal arts education, which to us has been a very interesting thing to see. Yes?
Question over here. One of the underpinnings of the system is the assurance that the courses are indeed equivalent between different institutions. And you bring that about by having regular reviews of the courses. I think you said twice a year?
Twice a year. Twice a year is about all the colleges are willing to handle. It's a big thing. So about twice a year, sometimes more.
What I was, if you have the information, how long does the review take, and to what depth do you perform the review to assure the faculty that these courses are equivalent?
Okay. It takes, once we have done the front end work, which can take a couple months, to get everything together. It depends how many courses we're circulating. But once we've done it and sent it out, we give them 6 to 8 weeks. And as I said earlier, they look at it, but if there's a problem and somebody says, we're not sure about that course, we will talk to them as much as we need to talk to them to help them. We will get syllabi, we will get extensive course descriptions. We'll ask about the assignments in the course and forward that to the institution that has the issue. So it is a very rigorous process, and we don't ever want an institution to feel that basically we didn't care and that depth wasn't important to us, because in the long run, with all of the push to credit for prior learning and especially the military training and experience, we still want our soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coasties, airmen, and their families to get quality degrees. That's really the bottom line. Anybody else?
This is a pretty simple one. So when you're speaking about tuition assistance, is that just the GI Bill, or are there other things that come in?
There are two different things. Tuition assistance is the tuition assistance that is provided for active duty military service members by the services. The GI Bill is for veterans, even though active duty people can use the GI Bill as a supplement or in lieu of their tuition assistance, but they're two different things. Wow, virtually on time. Thank you very much.